today we're going to be looking at this Landrover Discovery II, and today I'm going to be looking at the steering rack. We've got a bit of play in the ball joints on either end, so let's see how we get on. So here we are underneath the vehicle, and as you can see at the end of the ball joints here, very rusty, and this bar that connects both wheels side to side is actually the connecting rod between the passenger side and the driver's side wheel. There's a bit of play in both ends of the ball joint, got a bit of oil leaking off the front diff there, so we'll need to sort that out later as well. So first job is to try and release the ball joint on this side. Now I've already removed the split pin from inside the castle nut, and the next step is to try and get the castle nut off. So let's see if we can do that with an impact wrench. Okay, it's a 17mm, so let's pop the impact wrench on there and let's see. No, she's stuck on there pretty tight. That's not unsurprising. In fact, I was expecting that to happen. Okay, so next step, let's get some heat on there. So what we're going to do is just apply some heat to the castle nut itself. We don't want to heat up the bolt too much, but we want to see if we can get that nut to expand and release the rust bond that's on there. Give it a nice all-round heat. Try not to set fire to the rubber boot that's on the track rod end there. This usually does the trick, so we'll give it some heat and then we'll put some penetrating oil in there and leave it for a couple of minutes to just let that heat suck that oil in. So you can see there we're starting to heat up the grease inside the ball joint. It's starting to bubble up inside there. So we know the heat is getting inside. There's a lot of heat going into that right now with this blowtorch. Okay, so that's had a couple of minutes of good heat on there. I'm going to let it cool a little bit, and then I'm just going to put some WD-40 in there, and we'll just let that sink in and hopefully get in. The heat will start to suck it into the ball joint and we'll be able to remove it. So we'll let that sit for a couple of minutes and then come back and put the impact on again. Okay, right, impact back on. Let's see how she does this time. Nope, we're going to have to break out the breaker bar. Okay, so we've got a breaker bar on there now. Let's see if we can get a bit of leverage on there to... cracked straight away. That's what we like. Ooh, a little bit warm still. But there she comes. So a little bit of heat. I think the impact wrench was just a little bit too weak to remove that. So that's one side pretty much off. And you can see there's a little bit of rust in there. There's a little bit of slack still, so it's rocking side to side, but there is a bit of a wobble on there. You can feel it when you're steering. There's a little bit of a clunk. So yeah, let's have a look at the other side and see if we can do the same process. Okay, here we are on the passenger side of the vehicle. Now, whoever put this on before used a castle nut on one side and a threaded nylock on the other side. This one's actually an 18mm as opposed to the 17 that was on the other side. So we'll do the same process. I'm not going to even try to undo it without putting some heat on there first. So first step, get some heat on it, try and expand this bolt here, then get some penetrating oil in there, allow it to get into the threads, and that should crack off like a beauty. Now, because this is a nylock thread, you should start to see some bubbling coming up as the plastic inside starts to heat. Unfortunately, when you put heat on these things, you need to trash the bolt. There's no way we can use that nut again. It's going to be useless. But it's a good way to get these things freed up pretty quick. Again, if you're using anything that's flammable like this underneath the vehicle, make sure you've got no dripping fluids. Last thing we want is to set fire to the car. And there we can see it starting to bubble already in that plastic section, which is good. We can hear it as well. Gotta make sure it's not too hot when you do this. Last thing you want is that catching fire, so always give it a couple of minutes just to cool off a little. It won't take too long to get that oil in there. Okay, so a couple of minutes and let's put the 18mm on. Again, on the breaker bar, there's no point going straight for the torque wrench. We didn't have quite enough power, and let's see, there we go. She's starting to crack. And just push away on this side because we're the other side of the vehicle. Just give it another move around. That's a little bit warm for me to put my hands on so far, so we'll just crack it a couple of turns just to make sure she's turning. And then let's get a ratchet on there so we can remove that while it's still warm. Okay, so now we've got a ratchet. We'll just pop that 18 on there. And let's just turn her off. Get that nut down. Now, I'm not going to remove the nut all the way on this one. I want it to go to the end of the threads, and you'll see why in just a second. So that's pretty good just there. In order to remove it from this section here, this metal cylinder, the bolt is in there quite tight, and this is conical inside the rubber boot. So what I'm going to do is just give that a sharp tap with a lump hammer, which should be enough to just jolt it free, and that should come free. This whole bar will release then from the mounting bracket. Once we've done that on both sides, we'll take the bar off and we'll go back to the workshop counter and I'll show you what the new bar looks like. So we just need to watch as we take the rod out here, that wheel's going to come loose, so we'll just lower that down to the floor out of the way. And our wheel is now flopping and loose. It's lost its connection to the passenger side. Okay, here we are. So grabbed a couple of things from the tool chest, and first one is a set square. What I'm going to do is just line up the two. So I'll make sure we're parallel to this bar here, and then in alignment with the end of this bar. And I can see, not only could I see it by eye, but I can see really clearly now we've got quite a gap here. We've probably got, I don't know, 0.5 centimetre, 5mm, just over 1/4 of an inch between the end of this and there. So this one is considerably shorter than this, even though we counted the threads. I believe it's because this section here is a different size to this section, or it may be that the manufacturer is slightly different. So what I need is the end of this to the other end, and these two bars to be in alignment on both ends to make sure we keep the tracking in the same place. Okay, so what we're going to do is tighten up this nut here. I believe it's a 17, it is. So let's put the ratchet on that end, and then I've got a 17mm spanner to go on there, so we can just hold it in place. Let's just turn the camera so you guys can see what I'm doing here. And all we're going to do is start tightening those up. Super important, move the brew out of the way. There we go. We want that to be nice and tight. So what's happening here is this bar has a slot in it just here to allow the threads to move backwards and forwards, make it easy to go in. And what I'm doing is tightening this clamp, which clamps that shut. So it gives it a nice tight, and it'll stop this from unwinding. And obviously, as it's part of the steering system, it's critical that we get that nice and tight. So I don't want to over tighten it, but we've got a nylock knot on here. So let's give it enough foot-pounds that it's definitely not going to move. Obviously a little bit tricky. I think that's pretty tight already, you know. Oh crikey! Yeah, no, I would say that's pretty much where it needs to be. Yeah, I think that's good. So let's just double check and make sure that it's clamped it shut. And I don't know if you can see clearly on the camera there, but we've got quite a gap here and a very small gap there. So it's obviously tapered down and closed up, which is good. So that's now locked in place. Now we need to do the same with this one. Because I've been moving it around on the bench a little bit, let's just do a quick double check on the measurements. The last thing we want to do is tighten it up, be in the wrong position. So we'll get those in position again. There we go. Double check that we're the same distance from here, and this time we are 62mm, 64. Let's move that in. 62, 62. Okay. Oh crikey, moved it again. Okay, let's try that again. So 62, 64, 62, 62. Just make make sure the side of our bolt is there. Right, do a quick measurement on bolt to bolt like we did before, and I've got 88, and let's do the same on this one, on the new one. So bolt thread to bolt thread, and it's a little bit longer there. That's now showing it's about 89, so we're about half a turn out. So let's go back that way, and that might be longer actually. Might need to come back the other way. Let's have a quick look. So put the tape on, and that's good, spot on. Okay, so we're in the right place. This one I believe is a 13, so let's just change our socket over and let's get that clamped in, and then we can start tightening them up properly without loosening anything off. And I can actually feel, just got my thumb in there just to feel it pressuring down, and I can feel it coming in, which is good. It's now starting to turn the bolt on the other side on here. So what we're going to do is just turn that over, grab a spanner for 13, and then tighten that one down as well. Okay, here we are then, back underneath the car. So this is the bracket that we're going to be putting the new bar back into. As you can see, the weight of the wheel is allowing it to flop around. So what I'm going to do is take our new bar that we have here, and oops, not the camera, let's put that back. Okay, going to take our new bar. First thing I'm going to do is remove the nut from the end, because obviously we don't want that on there. These ones, by the way, are nylock nuts, 19mm, much better than the ones we had before. But I actually think I still prefer castle nuts, just so you can get that split pin through the cotter pin, but never mind, here's what it is. So let's get that pushed back into there, and as you can see, this metal bar is now going to slide in, and it's a little bit tapered as well, so it binds in there tight once it's tightened down. I'm going to turn on the 19mm nut just for now. Whoops, get it in the right ball. Always difficult when you're doing something upside down. So let's just turn that into position. There we go, just thread that in. It'll go tight just where it hits the nylon, just there, so we'll leave that for a second. I'm going to do the same at the other side, and then we'll come back and get this tightened up. Okay, I've repositioned the camera so we can see a bit clearer, and I'm just going to try and drive that in and see how that fares. Okay, don't know if you could see on there, but that pulled the bar down, pulled it in nice and tight. So what I'm going to do next is just put a spanner on there and an Allen key, and we'll tighten that up nice and tight. Okay, again, like I said before, 19mm. So got a spanner on there. Oh, he's on there pretty tight already. Let's just give it a little nip. Ah, perfect. Okay, I'm happy with that. That's in nice and tight. What I will do is, once we've done a test drive, we'll bring it back into the shop, and then we'll just double check and make sure these nuts are tight and there's no play. We don't want any vertical play in this at all. So now over to the other side, and let's do the same thing. See how she performs. So what we're going to do is just do a really slow road test. I don't want to do anything too dangerous. Obviously we've just put something new on the steering rack, so let's see how it performs out on the road. Does it turn the car when we expect it to? Feels okay so far. The steering wheel is quite light, there's nothing too heavy on there, so let's just see how she performs. We'll just do a quick run up the road and see how the steering feels, whether it's too heavy or too light. So that's a good turn there, feels okay. And just bring up speed, so 30 kilometers an hour, no vibration or anything through the steering rack. It's not pulling side to side, it seems to be pulling exactly how I'd expect it to. If I move the steering side to side, I can feel it moving the car, so I'm quite happy with that. I think we've just had a successful job So we'll run it up the road and then take it back to the shop and just double check that those castle nuts are on there nice and tight, those no-lock nuts. Okay, so there we go. That's another successful job done. Changed the steering rack on the Landrover Discovery II. Everything is nice and tight. I checked underneath, those castle nuts are staying on there nice and tight. There hasn't been any movement. So for the next few days I'm going to run it around and see whether or not there's any play in the steering rack. I think just to be safe, I'll check it again in a couple of days' time, make sure those no-lock nuts haven't backed off at all, and call that a job well done.